Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smart, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smart has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of KIVA since 2011. KIVA is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through KIVA, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be relent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through KIVA. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a microlender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Well, hello. Today I'm speaking with a highly sought-after speaker, trainer, and coach known as the Jim Carrey with a PhD, Dr. Danny Brassell. He has spoken to over 3,500 audiences worldwide and authored 16 books, including his latest book, Leaders Begin with Motivation. He helps entrepreneurs, executives, and small business owners boost their business and improve their communication skills. Dr. Danny, how are you?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me, Gerald. More importantly, thanks for spreading some joy around the world.
Excellent, excellent. Well, listen, how did you get started in your field, and what's made you so successful up to this point?
Oh, well, that's a loaded question. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. I've done lots of different things throughout my life. I guess that's probably how I got here, was one mistake after another. Really, I'm very blessed. I spent a good chunk of my life teaching in South Central Los Angeles, and that's when reading became important to me. It's ironic. I'm considered America's leading reading ambassador, and I actually grew up hating reading. My father was a librarian. I always hated the public library. It always smelled funny to me. The furniture was always uncomfortable, and there was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet, and always some crazy homeless guy by the bookshelves thought he was a vampire. It wasn't until I started seeing a lot of my students didn't have a lot of the access that I had growing up, and I said, shame on me, and it became kind of a passion.
Right.
From there, I became a professor. From there, I started speaking all over the world, and now I work with executives and entrepreneurs, helping them create powerful presentations. So that's it in a nutshell.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let me ask you this question because obviously reading is fundamental, and reading provides us with the ability to transform ourselves, because it's really through words and knowledge that we grow, and we take on different views of the world. And I tell anyone, if they want to change who they are or grow, it's really the books you read, the people and and the places you see. All those things combined can help you transform. What do you think is poorly understood about the fundamentals of reading? Because obviously right now in America even, we're not doing that great when it comes to, really helping our kids fall in love with reading, especially with all the internet and the videos and TikTok. People are really getting away from the fundamentals of growth and reading. And what do you think is so poorly understood, and why is that?
Well, I like that phrase that you use, falling in love with reading. I mean, I find that schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. But the question I always ask people is, what good is it teaching a kid how to read if they never want to read? I teach
Exactly.
why to read because I've never had to tell a kid go watch TV. I've never had to tell a kid go play a video game, and I never want to have to tell a kid go read. I want them to choose to do it on their own because they love it. And I feel that's where we're failing our kids is for some reason people equate reading with Dostoevsky. And I'm not putting down Russian literature, but the research is very clear on this. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. It doesn't matter if you're reading James Joyce or James and the Giant Peach. People who read more read better. So I think one of the important things to point out to people is to be very intentional on what you read. I mean, if you're a business person like Warren Buffett or Elon Musk, they're obviously not reading novels all day. They're reading business reports. They're reading stock reports, things like that. I could have kissed LeBron James before the NBA Finals when he was with the Miami Heat. They showed him in the locker room reading The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, wow, he did more for literacy than I'll ever be able to do.
Yep.
And so when I'm working with people, I say, what are you interested in? Let's design a reading program around that. That would be my advice to anybody out there.
Excellent, excellent. Because reading is very fundamental, and like you said, with LeBron James reading The Hunger Games, and just you learn the value of reading when you notice others that you admire spending time reading. And I think a lot of leaders, we should spend more time talking about what we've been reading and sharing what we've been reading to help people understand the power of reading. And in fact, as we get into our discussion, I've read your book. I thought it's only fair if I bring somebody on and they have a book that I at least read one of their books. I didn't read all 16, but I did really at least read one of them. So tell me your story. I know you mentioned a little bit about your dad being a librarian, but I'm sure as you went through that short synopsis that there's some real stories in there about things that really were page turners for you that helped you to fall in love with reading and find your purpose.
Indeed, Gerald. So when I was a kid, I used to love it at 12:15 every day because Paul Harvey would come on the radio. I don't know if you remember Paul Harvey, he passed away a couple of years ago at the age of 425 years old. But I grew up listening to Paul Harvey. He'd come on the radio every day and say, "I'm Paul Harvey," with the rest of the story. And he had these incredible yarns that were about 5 minutes long, where the entire time you're curious, trying to figure out who's he talking about or what's he talking about.
Right.
And when I was a teacher, I was the first teacher in the history of my school not to have any tardy students because I always started off my class by reading a Paul Harvey story to the students, and they couldn't get enough of it. But the reason I wrote the Leadership Begins with Motivation book was a lot of those Paul Harvey stories were about people like Sears and Roebuck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, kids in 2023 don't even know what Sears and Roebuck is. And so I created an updated version, and my stories are about people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Michael Jordan. And it's actually interesting, completely unintentionally. After I wrote this book, I read it and I'm like, without any intent, a lot of my examples are of white male Americans. And so the book I'm writing right now, most of the examples are females, minorities, and international examples, because I think people need to be exposed to those inspirational stories from everywhere.
Well, you did mention Dennis Rodman in there. I thought that was
I did.
I did catch that one. It's like, okay, differentiation. I like that one. Well, listen, before we take a deeper dive into our conversation, I'd like to tell everyone about a great book from one of our sponsors, A Symphony of Choices.
Introducing A Symphony of Choices, the must-read book for any manager looking to improve their decision-making, project management, and workplace engagement skills. Author Gerald J. Leonard takes readers on a journey through a high-pressure season for a symphony orchestra, where a mentorship program was implemented to turn things around. Through real-life examples and relatable anecdotes, you'll learn how mentorship can transform a team, boost productivity, and achieve outstanding results. This book is not just for music industry professionals, but for anyone in a leadership position who wants to improve their management skills. With practical tips and actionable advice, you'll discover how to make sound decisions in high-pressure situations, motivate your team to achieve their best work, manage complex projects with ease, foster a culture of collaboration and teamwork, and much more. A Symphony of Choices is a timely resource full of practical tools and real examples that will help you build the knowledge and skills to thrive in a project-driven world. Antonio Nieto Rodriguez. A Symphony of Choices is a book that will inspire and empower you to become a better leader. Whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out in your career, this book is an invaluable resource for anyone looking to improve their management skills and achieve success in the workplace. Order your copy today and join the thousands of managers who have already benefited from the mentorship lessons presented in A Symphony of Choices.
Welcome back. Now, talking about your book, I went through your book on the leadership begins with motivation. I was really inspired by it. I like the idea that the chapters were accessible, right? When I say that, it's like they're about 3 or 4 pages long. They're very action-oriented, short sentences, short paragraphs, but it's meaty because it gets to the point and it gives you a story. I really love the one where you talk about, I guess it's expectations, and you talk about panning for goal, that some people find their purpose right away or they find the goal right away. Some have to pan for it, and then others have to, they give up because they give up looking for it. But before we get into expectations, I want to start off with motivation so we're going to talk about seven of the things that you talk about in your book, because you talk about 32 of them. With motivation, you talk about the desire to take action, having a regular routine, and that leadership success is a choice. Can you take a deeper dive into that for me?
Well, leadership success is a choice. I mean, this is really one of the things I point out to people. There's plenty of readers that don't necessarily become effective leaders, but I have never read about an effective leader that was not also an avid reader.
Right.
And what I'm constantly trying to expose kids to is that, hey, you're a product of your choices. A friend of mine who unfortunately has passed away, he was a great speaker, Keith Harrell, had a great book on attitude is everything.
Right.
And he says a lot of people hear garbage in, garbage out, but that's wrong. Garbage in, garbage stays. And he's absolutely right about that. And you had said something earlier, which I completely agree with, Gerald. One of my mentors, Charlie Tremendous Jones, used to say, you're the same today you will be in 5 years, except for 2 things: the people you meet and the books you read. So you need to be wise, surround yourself with people that lift you up, and make sure you fill your mind with all kinds of inspirational stories.
Excellent. Now let's go back to expectation, because there, when I looked at the table of contents that said expectation, then I went to the chapter and it said anticipation. I went back, I went back to the beginning. It's like, wait a minute, it said expectations. I went back and it said anticipation. And then you started, I'm like, okay, now I get it. Because in the definition, anticipation, the word expectation lives there. And then you ask the question why, and then you go into the panning for goal story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you turn that into panning for your purpose, which I love the way you did that. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, what I actually just saw it exemplified a couple of weeks ago when the Denver Nuggets won the NBA Finals. Was their star player, the Joker. They asked him about his journey to win the NBA Finals, and he said everything was necessary, that he would have never been able to win the finals if the team hadn't have had injuries and underperformed in previous seasons, that they've really come together as a team, and all of those failures were absolutely necessary for them to reach the pinnacle of their sport. And I thought, wow, what a great perspective that too few of us understand, is that, every door that's shut is just opening up a door to something more glorious.
Exactly. I always say, when it comes to dealing with your either business challenges or your personal challenges, that we have to make a decision to grow through it and not just go through it. And it sounds like that's a perfect example of that quilt, to say, I want to grow through something, even though it's difficult and challenging, instead of just go through it. Because when you just go through it, you can turn out and become bitter and not better. But when you grow through it, it really makes you dig and find out who you really are, or you find out who you are and you grow past that, right? So the next thing we talked about is visualization, and you talk about a mental picture. I love the example of Russell Wilson, and the quote you said, "Daydreaming with a purpose."
Mm.
And what is your vision of success? You asked that question. So tell me a little bit more about the visualization chapter.
Well, what I loved about Wilson's parents, his father used to always say, "Why not you? Why
Yeah,
not you?" And I used to always say that to my students, that sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. I believe in all of you. They only give me the best and the brightest. So let's go out and make the world a better place. You have people telling you that enough, you're going to actually start believing it. I mean, this is why I tell people, stop watching. There's this horrible show on television I saw last night called The News, and it's totally depressing, and it'll put you in the doldrums, and you got to surround yourself with things that are going to lift you up. And
yeah,
so the whole purpose of visualization is, if you ask most people what success is, they give a very absurd definition, because they don't really actually understand what success is to them. I
yeah.
mean, a lot of people say they want to be a millionaire, and I always ask, well, why? And they can't really answer that follow-up question. You need to actually have a mission and understand your purpose and why you're going in the direction that you're going.
Exactly, exactly. Now, I want to take a break from the talk about the chapters. We're going to come back to four more that I want to talk about. And I want to ask you this question because you mentioned Charlie Tremendous Jones. Who are some of your role models?
Well, I've been blessed with lots of wonderful role models. My parents would be the top role models. I now that I'm a reader, I read all kinds of wonderful leadership books in the speaking realm. Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn were fantastic
Yep.
mentors to me. But that's what I always tell people. You learn this from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, is you don't actually have to know people for them to mentor you.
Right.
I never knew Jesus Christ, but I can read the Bible and he can mentor me.
Yep.
I never knew Alexander the Great, but I can read about Alexander. I mean, the more I read about Alexander the Great, there's so many great stories about him. My favorite is a beggar asked him for some money, and Alexander the Great threw him a bag of gold. And one of Alexander the Great's assistants said a couple of silver pieces would have sufficed his need. And Alexander the Great said, "It may have sufficed his need, but not my generosity."
Wow. Wow.
But that was great.
I love ancient history and Alexander the Great and all of the things he learned from Aristotle and his comrades that he learned from him. So that's a great story. Now,
Mhm.
I want to take another quick break for our sponsor. So if you want to take your productivity to the next level and achieve even greater success, check out our sponsor, Growth Strategies.
Are you looking for a way to take your business or career to the next level? Look no further than the Growth Strategies Coaching and Mastermind program from the Productivity Intelligence Institute. This innovative program is designed for entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals who want to accelerate their growth and achieve their goals faster than they ever thought possible. Led by productivity expert and mastermind coach Gerald J. Leonard, this program offers a unique blend of coaching, mentorship, and peer support. Through weekly coaching calls, personalized feedback, and accountability from a supportive community of like-minded professionals, you'll learn the strategies and tactics you need to achieve your most ambitious goals. Whether you're looking to increase revenue, build your team, or launch a new product or service, the Growth Strategies Coaching and Mastermind program can help you get there. Ready to take your business or career to the next level? Sign up for the Growth Strategies Coaching and Mastermind program today at productivityintelligenceinstitute.com/mastermind.
Welcome back. Now, let's pick up back where we were about your book. Leadership Begins with Motivation, which can be picked up anywhere. I picked it up at Amazon. You can get it in a Kindle version or the hardcover or paperback. And again, I think it's a really great book because I love the stories, and they're short stories, but you get to the meat of the story and of why you wrote or put that story in there. It's not just a story to be added. It really has a purpose for that chapter to explain the concept. So you talk about education, and you use Elon Musk. which after I read the story, I thought that's pretty fascinating that he read the encyclopedia. Just the enlightened experience, reading knowledge. Expound on that.
Well, Elon Musk is a wonderful example. Even running 4 different billion-dollar companies today, they say he still reads at least one book a day. He was bullied as a kid, and he spent all of his time in the library, in the bookstore. After he read all those books, he just couldn't satisfy his hunger for knowledge. And
Yep.
he's a fascinating individual, and that's what I find in some of these great leaders is you just see people. They might not be reading as varied as some of these people, but one of the tips I give to business leaders is I read a lot of children's books. I mean, I read probably 10 books a day now. Many of them are scratch and sniff and pop up, but I do read 10 books a day. I think a lot of the best gems are in children's books.
They really are. They really
I
are.
always tell people, yeah, go to the children's section at the library or Barnes and Noble, and you'll be amazed. Before I'd ever read an actual adult biography of Jackie Robinson, I read kid biographies about him, and I was fascinated enough by him that I decided to start reading many more books. And the more I've read about Jackie Robinson, I'm like, I don't know if he actually receives his due. I don't think Martin Luther King even happens without Jackie Robinson. I think he was a pretty significant figure.
Exactly. Another great children's book, Aesop Fables, which is a fascinating, group of stories. So it's really cool. All right, transformation. You talk about, in the transformation, you talk about dramatic change in form or presence. You mentioned Les Brown and tell his story, which I really enjoyed that. And then you have a quote that says, someone else's, I think this is what was said about Les Brown, someone else's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. And then you have another one that says, you have greatness within you. And I think that's something that Les Brown says a lot. Can you go into a little bit more depth about that?
Well, first of all, Les Brown's just one of my favorite speakers. If any of your audience hasn't heard him speak, it's absolutely one of my favorite speeches. He's been around for 40 years, and he grew up in probably the most negative environment possible. But fortunately, he had a mother who believed in him, a mother who adopted him, and a teacher that believed in him as well. And he overcame a severe stutter like me, and became a transformative speaker and a sage to a lot of great leaders out there. So, I always tell kids, I taught in the hood in the inner city, and I used to always look at my kids and I'd say, hey, you all are lucky. You're poor. A lot of the most successful people in American history started off poor. What separated them from everybody else? They didn't make poor choices. So be very wise about who you surround yourself with, and don't cripple yourself with excuses.
Yes, exactly. And I think, to that point, in regards to transformation and growing up poor or growing up where you don't have all of everything handed to you. And I think there is a part of of things being handed to you that actually cripples you. Like you said, you grew up with books all around you. And it wasn't until you started teaching in a neighborhood where they didn't have the opportunity for books, and you realized the blessings that you had previously because of the lack of oxygen and books these other people had, and it really helped you to see, so it showed you that even though I was surrounded by books, I was poor in knowledge because I didn't take advantage of the books. But then you corrected that for yourself and for those in your presence that as you taught them. So I think it's awesome. The last two, maturation and differentiation. Obviously, maturation is about growth. You talk a lot about taking action and not inaction. And, that most people regret the failure of acting, not so much the fact that they failed at something. They regret the fact that they did not even try and they failed to act. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, President Truman had a great quote on that, Gerald. He said, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. And the people that accomplish anything are the people that are actually doing things.
Right.
One of the things I like to point out to people that love to gripe about politics in this country, I always point out that politicians did something you and I haven't done. They ran for office.
Exactly. When someone's out there, they're in the arena, right? Mm. They're in the arena. They're in the game. You know, and a lot of times the pundits sit around and talk about and complain about them, and they're not in the game, right? But it's the folks that are in the game that are actually making the difference. And so, speaking of difference, the last point I want to a section of the book that I want to talk about is differentiation, and it's this. You talk about it being a state of being distinct, or learning how to utilize your unique strengths, and then you tell the story of Dennis Rodman. I love the way you tell the story because you don't mention Dennis Rodman. You don't mention Dennis Rodman until at the end of that particular story. And you talk about all the accolades that what we focus on with Dennis Rodman is not what made him unique.
Yeah.
It was the thousands of rebounds and the awards and all the great plays that he made that made him unique. And it wasn't just what we see on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always tell people if you go through life trying to be like everybody else, that's all you're going to be, is like everybody else. That the people we talk about in history were truly unique.
Excellent, excellent. As we get ready to wrap this up, tell me about a project or a goal that you're working on that's going to add significance to your life. And if you were sitting here a year from now, what would make you proud of some things that you've been able to work on yourself?
No, that's a cool question, Gerald. Thank you for that. Well, during the pandemic, I was able to connect with a gentleman in Ireland by the name of Diarmuid Hudner, who has this wonderful company called Cyber Smarties, which is a social media platform for kids ages 5 to 12 that teaches kids how to use social media positively. So, for example, let's say I try to text you a message, Gerald. I say, Gerald, I think you're ugly. Well, it won't let me send the message. Instead, I get a pop-up that says, that's not a nice thing to say to Gerald. Here are some positive things you could say to Gerald. And research shows that it frustrates kids so much that they can't send it quickly that within 3 days, they stop sending any kind of negative messages. And this program has single-handedly eliminated cyberbullying in Ireland, and now it's in India, UAE, Turkey, and New Zealand. And awesome. My goal is to introduce it here in North America, beginning with the United States. So
yeah, so it acts like a filter. So it acts like a filter on the internet based on who's sending the messages.
Yeah, and we need it for adults as well as kids.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we need that for everybody, right. Around the world. It's like, you can't send that message, think about what you're saying here. I think that's really, really important. Danny, is there anything that I missed that I should have asked you that I didn't talk about?
Well, I did want, as a thank you to you and your audience for bearing with me today, I want to give everybody a couple of free gifts. So if you go to freegiftfromdanny.com. Again, freegiftfromdanny.com. I'm going to give everybody a complimentary e-copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed. This is a book I wrote for an elementary school principal who was trying to keep his faculty and staff positively engaged. So I said, okay, I'll write you a book. So every week I give you a concept, an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're probably too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's picture book recommendation. Demonstrates the same concept. You can read that in 5 minutes. And I'm also going to give everybody access to a 5-day reading challenge I did last summer with about 700 parents around the world online, where every day for a week, for an hour, I'll give you all kinds of ideas on how to get your kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. You can get all that at freegiftfromdanny.com. And Gerald, I just really wanted to thank you for inviting me today. I can't get enough of you, my friend. Thanks for all that you do.
Hey, no problem at all. I really appreciate it. And I will post all of that, what you just talked about, in the show notes. And in fact, I'm going to post this interview that we just had today, because I really enjoyed our conversation. I really think it's valuable information that people need to know about because, again, not every leader is a reader, but you cannot become a leader without being a reader. And I believe in the power of reading, and I really appreciate you, standing on the global platform and really getting the message out about the value and importance and the transformation that happens when we spend time reading really good books or just reading overall, and that we need to fall in love with reading just like we fall in love with all the other things that we do, whether it's games or videos or whatever. And I really appreciate your time and really, being here and sharing your message. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Gerald. God bless.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.